Was there any one case, something beyond medicine that was at work, which resulted in a positive outcome?
We see a lot of that happening.
And ADHD, both working parents, because they can't spend that quantity in time, what kind of quality time should they be spending to notice these? How important is it for the father to have that first touch?
Now we are calling the first hour of life as a golden period of life.
Once there is no free-flowing milk, they panic.
A newborn baby being a blank slate, that is a gone philosophy even in the Western science, if you really look at it.
Is a killer born or made? Through Garbha Samskaras, is it possible to manipulate those traits and yield only positive attributes genetically?
The idea of nature versus nurture has always been battling with each other.
Is there anything that the mother can do to consciously select the best quality sperm and best quality genetics? Ma'am, do babies really carry that prenatal stress or the stress of the birth? Jaundice is so common these days.
A lot of mothers have actually said, I don't feel it.
She's a senior pediatrician with several decades of experience. She was once with Fernandez Hospitals and she gave up that corporate life to offer her services in Vivekananda Health Institute in Ramakrishna Mutt, Hyderabad. She's Dr. Anupama Reddy and she is here with us to help us navigate through pregnancy, pre-pregnancy and post-pregnancy phase as well. Welcome Anupama ma'am, and thank you for beginning Aaryajanani Trust for all of us. It's a non-profit organization and today's is our first podcast. Thanks to the visionary leadership from Mohan Maharaj and of course thanks to you that we are all here under one mission. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, Geetha, for that.
How are you feeling, ma'am? Excited?
Very good.
So this will be our first ever podcast and let's jump right into it.
Yeah.
Ma'am, we talk a lot about miracles and we also witness a lot of miracles that happen with our mothers who join our workshops. But in your medical career and in your experience, was there any one case wherein you felt you've given it all? Medically, you have given it all, you've used all your knowledge and skill, but still there was something beyond medicine that was at work, which resulted in a positive outcome. So did you experience anything like that?
A very interesting question, Geetha, because what happens is in our profession, especially the medical profession, we see a lot of that happening.
Wow.
We see that we've done our best and sometimes we say things cannot happen better and contrary to that. And sometimes we say in spite of what we are doing, some babies recover.
Wow.
In spite of what we're doing, some babies don't make it. So I think this is very, very much relevant because how things go is definitely not in our hands. And it makes us very clear in our profession, especially. If you want me to quote one particular incident, in fact, during the journey of Aaryajanani itself, we have a lot of intensive cares and stuff. But in Aaryajanani also, there was one such mother who came and joined probably around the 32, 34 weeks. And she came just like any other mother. Once she joined, then she was encouraged and inspired. So she came back to me in the clinic with her reports, antenatal reports. And they explained that in the antenatal report, it said that the baby will not be able to survive because there are a lot of medical problems in the baby. It could have a genetic problem, congenital chromosomal disorders, a lot of things they had. But this baby was very precious to them. So, and I looked at the reports and it clearly mentioned some of those things were not good for the baby. Baby had a heart problem, baby had an amniotic fluid issue. So, but they had passed that stage and they were going to leave it to maybe divinity or whatever, the higher intelligence, whatever we may call it. And they just wanted the baby. So that's when we said, since you cannot do anything and doctors also cannot do anything, do your best in the form of relaxations, being, with your own self, connecting to the higher self and connecting with God. These kind of practices which are not which will control basically what can happen to a human being, try to generate some good feelings over there. And then we saw this baby born. Of course, the baby had a heart problem, but the baby did survive. And then they came back with the baby when the baby was 9 to 10 months old. When the cardiac surgery was done, baby was doing well. And this was a baby where they said, the doctors and everybody clearly proclaimed that cannot have a life in this baby after the baby is born.
Yeah.
So these things, definitely we see a lot of that happening. And I feel it's magical. More than magic, I think it's probably some other divine intervention which does happen in our lives.
Oh, yes, absolutely, ma'am. And in our workshops and in our program, we see that almost every day when we work on it. So, yeah, absolutely. True. Lovely. Thank you for sharing that experience. So, we have a lot of questions from our mothers and from our team members and even from our social media that we've gathered today. And we'd like to ask you some of those. So, please feel free to answer them in whatever depth you'd like to take it forward. So the first thing is, most of our workshops are centered around the crucial golden period, which is the first 1000 days of human life. Why is it important? Why is it crucial? And why is that our focus?
Yeah. So this is basically, we would say, a modern pediatric knowledge which is coming in. And we say the first 1000 days, I think most of us know now, but just to reiterate, it is basically from conception to the 2 years of life. Now, what is happening in this period of life? Very clearly, there are many scientists, Macmillan is one of them, who's done a lot of study on whatever happens in this period of life. It's called developmental origins of health and disease, DOHAD we call it. That means it has a lifelong consequence on your health, disease, whatever status that you have. The reason why is in this period, if you really look at it, 80% of the baby and the individual is being formed. 80% of the brain development, physical, mental, emotional, all these stages of the baby's, even physical development happens in the first 3 years of life, within the first 3 years. So this impact is there lifelong because the cells are being made, the brain structure is being formed. So obviously all the influences are known to have lifelong consequences. For example, if you can just talk about physical thing, there's a lot of comparison to how the baby is at the time of, the mother is at the time of pregnancy, in the sense of a physical weight, physical well-being, nutritional status, to how the baby goes on to have long-term diseases like diabetes, hypertension, obesity. And these are the problems that we have nowadays, the non-communicable diseases. So there is a lot which can be done in this period of life. And this is what we call as the developmental imprinting stage. That's when all the imprints are made. And then that's the reason for why you have a lifelong consequences. Okay. So obviously it's a most critical period of life.
That makes sense. Ma'am, but the first 3 years, they are strange in a way wherein, because it's a baby, parents may not be privy to the concept of 80% of brain development when it happens right then and there. They wouldn't be able to diagnose if there is a concern. Like, for example, these days, autism is a very major issue and it's a concern. ADHD, a lot of children are suffering from these. So how will a parent know what are the symptomatic behavioral traits that these babies show, which the parents should pick up and realize that, okay, maybe the baby needs a little bit of extra attention on this spectrum. So is there anything that they should look out for?
Yeah. So as you know, when the baby is developing, usually at each point of time, they have certain milestones. Physical, emotional, social, behavioral milestones happen. So when you look at these milestones, you can be actually vigilant on certain milestones. There are some researchers who say the way the baby breastfeeds itself, you can make out. But obviously the mother is not going to be privy, like you said. But there are obvious developmental milestones, like between 6 to 12 months, this baby would be actually having a social smile. Now, the difference between autism and any other thing is the socialization. They don't have speech. They have a very good hearing, but they don't have speech because the communication is a problem.
Okay.
So if you look at a deaf mute, they don't have a speech because they cannot hear. Here they can hear, but they cannot speak because that's communication. Okay. And their behavior, in the sense, the socialization. They don't look at the mother. They don't recognize the mother. They don't have eye-to-eye contact. And when they see certain things, by the time they're 1 year of age, they would see certain things. Typically you'll find a child pointing out to something, maybe an aeroplane on the sky. They'll point out. Those things are missing because they don't know how to. But apparently between 12 to 18 months, that is when these features come up more because they are not able to communicate. Language skills do not develop. And also more interaction with other children. These things are deficient. So once you look at, a child who's got a little bit of repetitive behavior and crying too much or being on their own and not able to communicate too well.
Yeah.
Rough, the mother knows instinctively there is something. That is when you can go to their pediatrician, and they will be able to do a kind of certain questionnaires are laid out, and things are told, what spectrum they may belong to, whether normal or abnormal can then be assessed over there.
Right. Ma'am, in an ideal world, at least one of the parents is always with the baby, especially in these first 1,000 days. But in the present world, wherein we have both working parents, what are the extra measures that they should take to ensure that they notice these traits? Because they can't spend that quantity in time. What kind of quality time should they be spending to notice these?
Yeah, again, a very nice question, Geetha. And I always wonder, it is not the quantity the child needs. It is only the quality. Most working women might think that they don't have quantity, but essentially, if they understand when they are there with the baby, the quality that they spend, respond to the baby's needs. Simple things like we tell in the classes also, like when the baby is making some noises like cooing, babbling, you respond to them. This is what we call as a serve and return response. Okay. Serving in the sense the baby serves a kind of an activity, and the mother responds to it. So when the baby is saying ooh, then the mother responds automatically. So in that way, they actually are stimulating the baby. So the way they kind of have that quality time with the child, whenever the child needs something, you respond to them. And that's the way that is all which is enough to develop the synapses, the synaptic connections which happen in the first 2 years of life after the baby is born. Right. Of course, before the baby is born, then we talk about the bonding skills, the emotional attachment with the baby. If that is also not prevalent, then, they're not able to do that because they've got a very busy life. That is when actually the working woman should know that even when the baby is in the womb, it's a very conscious being. Right. So you respond to the kicks of the baby, you respond, you speak, you touch, you kind of speak to the baby. These are the ways that the baby is much more stimulated, even then after baby is coming out. So there's so many ways of having quality time with the baby.
So sounds like the conscious parenting starts while the baby is in the womb, and it's a learning process for the mother also, because in some households, they only feed the baby, make sure that they give a safe space for the baby, but they don't really spend conscious amount of time. Like you said, the quality time is not really abundant in a lot of households until the baby reaches school ages. Yeah. So they don't really focus on learning aspects. So these are all like you mentioned, quality time that actually helps. So in Aaryajanani workshops, we focus a lot on the baby bonding as well while pregnant. So will that directly help the mother and the father in making sure that their viewpoint towards consciousness and awareness of the baby is in the right direction?
Absolutely. It's very logical also. Yeah. When the mother is attending, especially we request the fathers to attend, because father bonding with the baby, you will never be able to understand the relevance of it. And in our society especially, we find fathers interacting much later. Yeah. But the way the baby responds to the father. So there are a lot of scientific evidences, in fact, how the father himself can bond. In the sense how, the father can touch the baby in the womb or on the mother's tummy, and then how the baby actually plays with him through kicks, and then the father places it on another side. So it's the bonding which creates between the father and the baby. I know I'm first talking with the father because we feel fathers also are an important journey in this, for the baby, not for anyone else, but for the baby. When you bond, the positive hormones that we talk about, right? The oxytocin, the dopamine, all these kind of positive hormones which kick in, they actually are doing a lot of good for the mother's body itself. Wow. In the sense, you can go into more of normal delivery, breastfeeding rates are better, postpartum depression, this is a huge problem. perinatal mental health, whether you're talking about antenatal period or just after the baby is born, within the 6 weeks, you have a lot of turbulent periods for the mother. But the moment she focuses on bonding with the baby, these things can, the positivity comes in. The oxytocin is a love hormone. Whereas when you're stressed out, the cortisol is a negative hormone. So obviously normal delivery rates are better and things like that. And more than anything else, when your bonding is right, what we say is the infant neuronal and behavioural development happens.
I'm glad that you mentioned postpartum depression, ma'am. From my own experience, I did go through that phase. And now that, right after birth, my daughter is about 7-8 months old, I think, when I was introduced to Aaryajanani, thanks to you. But when I look back, I realize all the mistakes we've made during the pregnancy journey, which could have been avoided, and probably, we could have avoided the depression phase as well. And the key area being the breast crawl of the baby as soon as the baby is born. I think they took about 2.5 hours to place my daughter on me. And so there was a lot of time that lapsed. And I think it's very important for all the parents out there to know, not just parents, even the young adults who are watching this podcast, to let the message out that breast crawl is really important. Can you please talk about breast crawl, ma'am? And also the first touch. Now, I think there is a bit of awareness that, the mother has to touch the baby within a few minutes of birth. How important is it for the father to have that first touch? And is there any specific time period from the birth time?
Yeah. So now again, these things might look very natural and normal, but there's a lot of science research being done into the evidence of what we call as skin to skin, early initiation of breastfeeding. And from there, actually the recommendations have changed. In fact, if you look at earlier in our normal, labor ward practices, the obstetricians used to take the baby and give it off to us, the pediatricians. Yeah. We used to take the baby, dry up the baby, give your injection vitamin Ks, do whatever you want, and then take the weight of the baby and then come and present it to the parents. By then, it's more than an hour.
Yeah.
And now we are calling the first hour of life as a golden period of life, where the practices have completely changed. In the sense, the baby is kept on the mother's abdomen, and what we are calling as a breast call, and what you were asking about, is basically how the baby instinctively finds the mother's chest and goes on to suckle the mother's breast milk.
Right.
And when I say instinctively, how is that instinct born? Is basically the baby is in the mother's womb and the amniotic fluid and the breast milk has a similar smell. So that is when they're in the womb for 9 months. They're familiar only with the womb environment. Yeah. So they find the breast which has got the similar thing and they find their way there. And we saw this transition happening between how the deliveries happened from before to, when we started taking it in. And it's an amazing thing to see how the child really does it instinctively. And that is the only transition every baby in this world should have, from the womb to the world. And then you'll find the babies, very active and alert in the first 1 to 2 hours of life.
Yeah.
After that, actually, the baby is sleeping for a longer time. So you calculate that period of time and allow the baby to suckle and take its first feed. Usually within the first 1 hour of life, they do.
Okay.
And it happens very naturally. If they do that in the right way, you see what happens. The baby is skin to skin and we wrap up the baby and the mother together. In that process, the first thing the baby is, it's in the warm environment of the womb. Suddenly it's exposed to and sometimes it's, the doctor's advantage of having an AC environment. Yes. Okay, so the labor ward is nice and cool for us, but the baby needs a warmth. So the moment the baby is on the mother's chest, warmth is taken care of. Then the bonding processes happen. Smell of the mother, the warmth of the mother. These things have to happen to every newborn baby. And the nutrition, which it gets within. Yeah. This one practice of doing early initiation of breastfeeding, what happens is that sustained breastfeeding. We say till exclusively 6 months, the mother should breastfeed the baby. So this also automatically happens when you do the early initiation well. And it allows a lot of things. That colostrum which comes in, it decreases the mother's bleeding at the time of, even during the process of normal delivery. A lot of advantages are there. So that's why we say the importance is a bit too high in this.
Ma'am, speaking of colostrum, there is this misconception in majority of households wherein the grandparent or the parent of the pregnant mother would be there, and once there is no free-flowing milk, they panic and then they introduce either canned foods or something else. So how to convince them that it's just a few drops in the beginning? So that's an awareness, I think, that has to reach even them. So how should the pregnant mothers who are watching this podcast, let them know that it's natural, that's how the progression is made?
Yeah. So that's why we invite the grandmothers also for the workshops.
Yeah, they should attend.
Yeah. So no, when everything is said logically, right? So it's kind of convincing. So what we tell them is, initially, the amount of total colostrum that is there in a mother's body is 40 ml per day. 40 ml.
Okay.
And you really wonder when you see also there are few drops.
Yeah.
But what the basic, again, science behind this is the stomach capacity of a newborn is like a cherry in the first 3 days of life.
Wow.
So it requires hardly about 15 ml in the first, every feed. So that's why the colostrum is actually sufficient. And if you see every third, fourth day, you'll feel, we actually show the pictures. First 3 days cherry, then after that it's like a little bit like a walnut, then a peach. So then you understand, by the third day it becomes a walnut. And that is when, by the third day, the mother gets the milk let down reflex. That is, she starts producing good amount of milk. So if you're able to sustain this knowledge with them for the first 3 days, then you're clear. But why do we have to have, I sometimes feel, why do we have to try to understand anything? It's so natural. Sometimes, the divine forces, God has kept everything. 9 months later, you get into normal birth. The uterus contracts, the baby comes out. Similarly, the first 2 days, whatever milk you have is enough. You don't need to question these things which are there in nature. They're very, very naturally placed in our human system.
Right. There is this very interesting quote made by a 17th century English philosopher, John Locke, who said, "A newborn's mind is like a tabula rasa, a blank slate." But our ancient wisdom talks about karmic imprint that a human is born with. So the Garbha Samskaras that we are talking about in our program, how do we reconcile these both statements, ma'am? Which one is true, which one is not, or are they both true?
Okay, so when we start with, a newborn baby being a blank slate, that is a gone philosophy, even in the Western science, if you really look at it. Of course, when it came about, then the logic, why are we talking about it, comes in. But that was questioned even by the philosophers of the ancient past. So philosophy is different from physiology, I feel. Scientists come from the physiology angle, and philosophers know a little bit more of, they combine intuition with, their own experiences. So they're able to tell from another front. So if you're looking at the karmic theory, now our Sanatana Dharma, the basic thing of the world is based on time, space, and causation, right? So when you're talking about time, space, and causation, how the causation part is there. Karmic theory has to be the base of any life, whether it is a worm or a human being or a divine soul. So that karmic cycle, every person goes through. And when it goes through, what do you mean? It's going through multiple life and deaths. So obviously that karma, in the form of what we describe, is in the form of a subtle body, goes along, from one birth to the other with its karmic cycle and impressions. So it goes on to say, in the pregnancy itself, the baby in the womb is a very conscious being with a subtle mind of its past, right? And that's why Garbha Samskar makes a lot of sense, where those impressions, of course they come with certain impressions, and Garbha Samskar, it's especially methods to say how can we further improve that karmic cycle. So some of these things which are kept in as to what the mother should see, what the mother should hear, which causes impressions on the already existing subtle mind. And why it is very important, again, we discussed maybe in the first 1,000 days, is because that's a very, very impressive part of our human brain system, whether it's emotional, subtle body kind of a thing. So that is when these practices impact again for a life.
Oh. Okay.
So they do come with their karma. It's impossible. I mean, if you look at it, we also discuss, William Freire is another German person. He said, baby in the womb is like it's like a sleepless, it's in complete sleep. Cannot hear, cannot see, because there's only fluid there is no air in it. So it makes, again, at that point of time, probably logical. But now, in ultrasounds, in the past 30 years, they've been able to record emotions of the baby.
Yeah.
So now they have to also redefine what they think, which is nice about science, because they look at evidence and then they redefine their own understanding. Whereas ancient wisdom has come with absolute intuition. So what they said was out of revelations. So then it stands as truth forever.
Right. If these philosophers watch that video of if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands of the baby in the womb, they probably would change their mind. Okay, ma'am, when we are talking about karmic imprints, there is this one question that is asked in every corner of the world. Is a killer born or made? So when we say certain genetic traits are passed on and then they're passed on strong, through Garbha Samskaras, is it possible to manipulate those traits and maybe, yield only positive attributes genetically?
Yeah. So some of these studies have been done on what we call as monozygotic twins. Where the twins have got the same kind of genetic component. There are two types of twins, the dizygotic and monozygotic. So the monozygotic have got the same genetic impression. And this is, one person becomes a murderer. How is it? Because after they're born, it depends on how they have been nurtured.
Okay.
So this idea of nature versus nurture has always been battling with each other. Now there's some amount of knowledge, in the sense we say genetic is only about 20 to 30%. It's more of the environment which makes a big deal to whatever genetic traits we might have. Now genetic traits still are very, very important, like your physical characters, maybe your height, maybe your, certain physical characters that you have is based on the genetic. But suppose you're talking about mental, emotional, these kind of things are impressionable. So that is why the Garbha Samskar practice. And this is where we say biological imprinting through epigenetics, through, even other kind of molecular genetic kind of studies can change the baby's thought process also.
Okay. Ma'am, earlier we spoke about breastfeeding and the importance of it. So these days, because of working mothers again, the breastfeeding duration is decreasing, unlike the earlier days wherein our grandmothers and probably even our mothers used to feed for about 3, 4, 5 years. Now it's just 6 months and then they stop because they have to go back to work, the maternity leave is done. So is there any mandatory duration that they have to stick to, or is there any duration that is helpful at all for the baby?
Okay. So I'll start from the back of the question, I think.
Sure, ma'am.
It's any duration, even if it is probably one day a mother can feed.
Wow, okay.
There'll be certain situations, Geetha, and we find a lot of mothers get upset when they cannot breastfeed because they know the importance. So let's take them all in this question, saying that any amount of breastfeeding, how much ever you would be able to do is good. It adds that much benefit.
Yeah.
But if you call a recommendation, then we say till 6 months, it's exclusive breastfeeding. That means no water also is required. Even in hot summers like this, what we say is the milk composition, the way it is, the fore milk we call it, has got more water. So the baby, when they're thirsty also, it's quenched by that, quick suckling initially. So nature has it all, right? So for the first 6 months, it's exclusive breastfeeding. After 6 months, of course, along with breastfeeds, because it does not give total nutrition then, because the nutritional requirements for iron, calcium, these things can get deficient. So that's when we say complementary feeds have to be started. But breast milk should continue till 2 years of age. And now there's a lot of lobby, I would say, on breastfeeding, which I'm happy about. You can extend till the child really wants, and there are some people who would want to do it for much longer.
Ma'am, these days, the age of marriage has been pushed. So people are preferring to wait till 30 or till they have accomplished in their careers, some even, late 30s, to get married and bear children. But back in those days, God bless my grandmother's soul, she gave birth even in her 50s. I'm sure a lot of grandmothers have, God bless their reproductive systems. So why has that changed? Instead of waiting and trying for babies, women are preferring to freeze their eggs or, directly go for IVF. They probably would try for 1 or 2 years and then they would opt for IVF. So is there any window that they should keep in mind, or why has that shift happened, ma'am, from 60s, 50s to now?
Yeah. I think this particular question, our infertility experts and friends would be the best to answer. But because you've framed a very nice question, it is a trend that we are seeing. That, and I always say, due to various social circumstances, nothing is wrong, nothing is great, or nothing is right. It depends on the social environment that certain changes happen in the society. And now we do see that because, girls are becoming more oriented towards, their profession, which is partly what they want to have. So they are shifting the age of marriage and age of parenting. And with this, of course, we see, again, medical information clearly tells us infertility is more as with advancing age. Look, it's very, very good. Like you said, grandparents used to have children at 50, but what we didn't talk about is they used to have children at 15, and then they used to have multiple, right? So the first fertility happened when they were really quite early. So between 20 to 25 years, the fertility is much more higher. As they grow in age, to have their first child also, that's when, infertility kind of gets worse. Now, this paternal age and maternal age issues, when you look at it, why we are a little concerned is, especially if the mother is going above 35 years, then she is also predisposed to some medical conditions, which can impact the outcome for the baby. And also, you have a lot of genetic issues which can come up, like Down syndrome, things like that.
Yeah.
Now, if you notice, along with this, we find that autism, behavioural disorders, these are also coming to an increasing trend. Now, primarily autism, the reason is, of course, only genetic. There is a huge genetic kind of mutations which are responsible for autism. But along with it, what we need to understand is the environment around it. That is, maternal age, paternal age, the toxins that we are consuming, pesticides, pollution. And these all come under the epigenetic forum that we keep talking about.
Yes.
So genetic is one line, but epigenetic, you could say, surrounding the genes, the environment. So these kind of changes, we call them methylation, histone modification, these kind of changes. Actually, in a simple layman language, we can call it as switch on or switch off the existing genes. So you could have an autistic gene and it just gets switched on much more when you have an environment of maternal stress, maternal age, these kind of factors, and actually make it apparent to as a morphological finding of behavioral disorder, autistic spectrum disorders. So everything goes together, genetics and epigenetics, to form a human body.
Ma'am, of late, there are a lot of viral videos that we see wherein the studies have proven that out of the millions of sperms, it is the egg that chooses that specific sperm. So like that, when parents are planning, when to-be parents are in the planning phase, is there anything that the mother can do to consciously select the best quality sperm and best quality genetics at all?
Yeah. Again, this is more like the ancient wisdom, which is very, very well known. And the concept is at the time of conception, the thoughts of the parents, the will of the parents. These are the most important things, like you said, millions of sperms. Why does this egg select just that one sperm? It is the thought process of the parents at that point of time. If they've got a vicious mind, a hating kind of, they are actually what is said is they're inviting this soul into their family. So the soul finds its track into this family because they find it's home for them with these characters. They have those characters and they're finding a home for that. But at that point of time, at the time of meeting, conception, if the parents have genuinely a lot of love, a lot of prayers in their mind, what do you find? A soul which is wanting to be peaceful will be invited into their family. And this is well said in our literature, which I don't think modern science has yet proved it, but we always see how ancient wisdom actually precedes whatever modern science is actually there to prove. So I think modern science still needs to prove that fact, but we've already got it in our knowledge systems that this is the way a new child or a life is invited from into the world by the good thoughts of the parents at the time of conception. In fact, what we say is the thought of having parents itself, of having a child itself, is the starting of parenthood. And that is why we need to nurture our young adults with character building, with behavioral thing, because the future of the world is based on the generation to come through these young adults. So when there is a character transformation, obviously we're going to invite the better souls into this world full of war, and we want peace now all over. So we need individuals of strength, of character, of love, of compassion to fill this world. And these are these are the only tools that a parent has to be able to change their world.
Fascinating. I'm sure modern medical science will catch up soon. And I think this is why we have also launched pre-pregnancy and pre-marriage workshops, which are very, very crucial for our young adults. So please be sure to register for them. Ma'am, the other thing is, while breastfeeding, it has become not an active or a conscious effort from the mother's side. The mothers these days either are on phone, social media, or watch TV. So what kind of risk would that pose for the baby? Is there any risk at all to begin with? I'm sure the quality time is, of course, decreasing. But other than that, is there anything else that they should keep in mind?
So breastfeeding, again, like we discussed about antenatal bonding before the baby is born. And we also spoke about early initiation of breastfeeding. These are very, very, very critical points of time where this bond can develop. And that's between a mother and a baby. That bond is, sometimes we say, a child does not feel that. But the mother, till the child is ever there is a lasting bonding which happens, that attachment which happens. It is forever. I think all mothers like you would understand this feeling. It's very deep rooted in a mother, right? So these things are nurtured in these critical periods of time. And breastfeeding is one of them. It is the only time, in fact, when we say when the baby is born, the baby cannot focus beyond 12 inches, 9 to 12 inches. So that is the time when maximum amount, every 2 to 3 hours, how the baby or whenever the baby is demanding for a feed, that's the only time actually you're very, very close to the baby and you can actually, interact with the baby. Just imagine at this critical time, instead of bonding with the baby, looking at the baby and observing the baby's needs, instead of that, if you're looking at a cell phone, that is a totally different thing from the serve and return concept that we spoke about. So you're not even stimulating the baby in that process of, feeding and things like that. So these are some of the disruptive behaviors which can, go on for the child. And the one more biggest thing is, apart from this, when the mother is used to so much of social media, what happens? The baby as young as just 1 or 2 years will get onto this, it's very attractive, a phone with that moving images. Baby gets also into that habit. And that's when we say the baby also gets into this attention deficit hyperactive disorders. Because you see, in a cell phone, it's a 2D image, it's not a 3D image. And one more thing is they are looking at that social media, but they're not, at a picture, they're not getting any response. Even if they're talking to that in their own language, there's no response back. It's just a one-way thing from the system to the baby. That's when it's very, very not good for the baby, especially till 2 years of age. We say absolutely no screen.
Wow.
Because of this point that there is no communication. It is only a one way from the system.
Oh, very well put. I never thought of it like that. We are basically discouraging the baby from communicating by doing that. Oh, yeah, okay. Ma'am, do babies really carry that prenatal stress or the stress of the birth? And would there be any early behavioral symptoms that we can look out for?
Yeah. So this is a traumatic birth. There's a lot of, again, articles on traumatic birth and birth stories. And there is enough information as to how, reports being presented by great scientists in this field, like the prenatal psychiatrists that we talk about, whether it's Dr. Thomas Verney or Dr. David Chamberlain. These people have done a lot of research into this early childhood trauma. And early childhood trauma from birth history, from the way the normal delivery happened, and the way instrumentation, all these things have made a baby think of the equipment that is used. There's a lot of science behind it, and they do have these kind of memories of birth trauma, and which go on to their life also.
Okay. Is there anything that, because we keep hearing a lot of babies being placed in the NICU and, they are in the hospital for several days and sometimes weeks and months also. Is there anything that those parents should do to ensure that that trauma kind of wanes off a little bit?
No, definitely. Now, most of the neonatal intensive cares also have become very stimulating environments are being created for the babies, in the sense the way they do nesting. That means they create a womb-like environment even in the NICU, in the incubators, in the warmers, and they also play music. And one more very important part in neonatal care is when the parents actually go into the wards and actually touch the baby, sing to the baby, talk to the baby. And there is a community. In fact, some of the NICUs have, once a baby is a little bit off the main intensive care, they stay in the intensive care with the baby. And you also have the most important thing, which was always my pet topic, which we used to do a lot of, was kangaroo mother care. So kangaroo mother care is a very, very intimate kind of thing, where the baby and the mother, even before the baby is discharged from the hospital, may have a little feeding problem, may have certain issues, but the baby is allowed, even sometimes baby on oxygen also, we kind of put the baby onto the mother, skin to skin. Actually, the mother is like an incubator for the baby. And it's like, you see, mother's temperature is at 36.5. That's the normal temperature that the baby wants to be in. So by doing KMC, all the temperature, thermal control, heart control, everything happens well. So these are definitely early intervention. In fact, these are called parts of early intervention to help that preterm babies in NICU, being cared for and getting stimulated in the right way.
Okay. During pregnancy itself, at what phases does a baby develop consciousness or awareness, ma'am?
So the thing is, when you're talking about consciousness in the sense of the senses being aware of the baby, then you would think that, as early as what we talk about is that in the first trimester itself, baby is already sensing the mother's touch. This is what we tell our mothers too, that sensation of touch happens very, very early in pregnancy. Then, of course, the later things like taste, smell, hearing is a very big sensation, and consciousness element of the baby is expressed so much through the hearing, and that happens somewhere during the mid-pregnancy. And from then onwards, in fact, they're very conscious in the sense of listening, memory, prenatal memory, all these things are being formed inside the womb. There's a lot of information on how the baby's tastes, and also these are the two things which have said that whatever you do for the baby in the womb, how it has got again long-lasting memory. In the sense with the food that we eat, experiments say that, but essentially what we talk about is the implicit memory being put into the baby. That means the baby is, when the baby is in the womb, it's almost all what you're putting it is in the subconscious level of the kind of the waves that are there in the baby, the EEG waves that are there is actually in the subconscious state. So you're putting everything, all these inputs into the subconscious mind of the baby. So that's what is partly correlates with the implicit memory. As an example, what we say is, I mean, just to understand this, if a mother throughout her pregnancy is looking at a painting, which is like probably a Leonardo da Vinci painting, and she just keeps looking at only that painting, what the baby thinks later on in life is that a painting is only Leonardo da Vinci. They cannot relate to, there could be so many other paintings, because that's what is the impression that the mother has given throughout the pregnancy. So that's so much of imprinting happens in the womb. So that's why taste and hearing also has got a implicit memory requirement, and that's why you know obviously that the baby is a very conscious being.
There is a funny story behind that, ma'am. I think it's not just what you're looking at constantly, it's also whether you're enjoying it or not, because that strong emotion is definitely going to play. Because I used to have one baby picture which I disliked. For some reason, I did not like looking at that baby's picture at all, because the mouth was kind of open and then like that. He's a beautiful baby boy, but for some reason, for weeks, it stayed on the wall, and then I finally took it down, which is when I went for my 5th month scan as well. And when they showed the baby, the same face. So I think it's not just what we are looking at, but when we are strongly absorbing something, whether we like it or dislike it, that's going to happen. Okay.
Interesting.
And ma'am, one of the final questions in this Q&A is, jaundice is so common these days, and I keep hearing, that's normal. Once the baby is born, you just leave the baby in the hospital because the jaundice numbers are not right. Is there any way to avoid it, and is it really normal? During pregnancy, is there anything that they can do to avoid that?
Okay, so now you have to understand the physiology of what jaundice is all about. Basically, babies at the time of birth, because they're in that anaerobic conditions inside the womb, the hemoglobin level is very, very high. Suppose you and me would have around 12, 13 maybe. That's a very good value for Indian women. But if we had that, then the baby's normal at birth hemoglobin would be about 16 to 18, like that.
Wow.
Okay. So, because that's what they require to carry the oxygen in their system, because they're living in an anaerobic environment.
Now it's time for myth or fact round. I'll give a statement, ma'am. You just mention whether that is a myth or a fact according to you. If you want to explain, please go ahead. The first one is, picking up baby often spoils the baby.
Myth.
Okay.
I'm getting confused. Myth.
Jaundice is normal and expected.
What do you say? Myth or fact? Fact.
Fact, okay. Breastfed babies do not need supplements.
It is a fact, but we do give vitamin D as an essential drop. But it is a fact that they don't need lots of supplements. Okay. Initially, we used to give multivitamin, a lot of prescriptions used to go around this. But breastfed baby, the only thing that they need is extra vitamin D, which needs to be added.
Nice. Okay. Teething causes fever and diarrhea in a baby.
Teething, it's a myth in the sense not all babies have to have it, but some babies may have.
Okay. Late talking in a baby is always a problem.
I want to be very, very cautious about this, because nowadays it is, you have to be vigilant. So I'd say by the time they're 18 months, if they don't have a single word, then they need to look into it.
That's a great answer, ma'am. Babies need toys for their brain development.
Not at all. not at all.
I played with all sorts of vegetables, and my brain, I hope, is fine.
Perfect.
Breastfeeding is not a must after the initial teeth appear.
It's a myth.
Okay.
I'm getting confused with this.
Walkers help baby in walking well.
Myth, absolutely.
Okay. The first touch of a father can wait.
Absolutely not. So it's a myth.
Okay. So the next round is concerning or not concerning, ma'am. There are certain aspects in our daily lives that we have captured into statements. Please let us know if they are concerning or not at all. First is constantly comparing our children's milestones with the children's milestones that appear in social media, whether they are junior influencers or whatever we would call them.
This is very concerning. Forget about social media, forget about influencers. You should not compare your child with your neighbor's child also.
Well said. Screen time during breastfeeding.
It's very concerning.
Okay. Reduced outdoor play in early childhood days.
Very concerning.
And I'm sure a lot of COVID babies have missed out, children who were born during COVID. Is there any advice for the parents, ma'am?
So this natural stimulation, even if you've missed something, it doesn't mean that you cannot catch up.
Okay.
So even if for some reason you were not exposed, later on in life, you can always catch up. There is always a time period by which the baby can learn. So later on, you can take the baby to nature and, talk about, allow the baby to expose to greenery and,
Okay.
So yes.
Wow, that's very encouraging, guys. So COVID babies and parents, if you've missed out, you heard, ma'am, please go ahead and do it. The next one is the active screen time for a baby and a toddler. Let's just go with that first.
No screen time till 2 years, except for what we say is video conversations with family.
Okay.
Because that's when, especially when the child is abroad, then they get acquainted to, we discussed, right? They're communicating.
Yeah.
They're talking to the grandmother over the screen. Except for video conversations with families, till 2 years, there's no screen time at all.
And what about passive TV watching, ma'am? Because a lot of households, the TV always runs in the background, whether it's a serial or movie or something or the other keeps running. And what parents don't realize is the baby is kind of catching up on it.
No TV at all also. Till 2 years, that's the thing. It's also when you look at the vision, right? Till about 4 to 5 years, especially till the first 2 years, their vision also is not absolutely clear till 2 years of age.
Okay.
It's the way we also know, when you're 1 meter away, at the time of birth, actually the vision is just blurred. Then later on, 6 months, it becomes a little bit more clear. Then only after 2 years, there's clarity of vision. So definitely a TV exposure is not required.
Okay.
And if there's too much of exposure, like what we also say, like behavioural disorders, even myopia, high myopia is known for children. So.
Wow. Okay. Birthday cakes, the first year birthday cakes, can the baby have?
Concerning. Because nowadays, I'm not supposed to explain, no?
No, you can. Yeah, please.
Okay. Because nowadays, in fact, we're saying till 2 years, do not allow too much of taste of sugar or salt. This was not there earlier. We have changed this thing particularly now because of the diseases that we're facing now. Whether it's hypertension, diabetes, later on in life, getting used to junk food. These are the problems of nowadays society. So you better avoid these kind of tastes to be inculcated in a child because they have implications for the impressions the child has.
Okay, processed and purchased foods also?
Absolutely not. Home cooked food, taste of the mother, food from home, their own food. These are important.
Okay. And a lot of us are reaching out to the chat GPTs or Geminis or Claudes these days, and we are seeking AI for advice. So how appropriate is that for the new parents?
I would not say don't, because there is a lot of good information there. But if there is a confusion, and there's a lot of different kind of, rely on, somebody who knows these things better.
Ma'am, and the other very important question is, these days, anything that happens to the child, whether it is a cough, cold, any sort of allergy, the first thing that parents are doing is visiting Google or YouTube videos and then taking medications or home remedies from that. How concerning is that?
Now, that's concerning because these things have to be definitely examined by a pediatrician, especially their pediatrician who knows the baby from before. And, sometimes you'll have certain findings when you auscultate the chest. Sometimes there could be a wheeze, sometimes, different kind of things we get when we see the baby. So a lot of times some mothers even call me up and say, can you give some medicines on the phone? Even that I would prefer and tell them, visit, we'll see the baby and, decide what is to be done.
Okay.
Very important. And then later on, we can kind of follow up, maybe even on the phone.
Right.
I'm talking about even a direct pediatrician visit should be taken care of instead of just taking phone, medication.
Yeah. The next game is this or that. I'll give you two options, ma'am. Pick whichever you think makes more sense or is more essential. So, a new parent attending to newborn cries or a toddler's tantrums.
So I have to get this. What?
Which is more important to attend to? Newborn's cries or toddler's tantrums?
Newborn cries.
Okay. And breastfeeding on demand or strict feeding schedule?
On demand.
Okay. A pacifier or thumb suckling?
Thumb sucking.
Okay. Messy self-feeding or organized neat spoon feeding?
Responsive feeding, which is messy feeding.
Okay. Feeding milk through bottle or spoon and glass?
Spoon and glass.
Okay.
Bottles have to be avoided because you have more infections.
Okay.
So definitely we say avoid bottles.
Okay. And mild massages or deep oil massages before bath?
Mild massages.
Okay.
Whichever should be comfortable for the baby. So it's usually the mild massage which the baby enjoys.
That goes against our ancient ritual, wherein the more the baby cries, the better.
No, actually the ancient rituals also, when they're done in a very experienced way, you find some of them doing it. Babies are quieted down. In fact, they sleep by the end of the massage.
Okay.
So when they do all those, all on the joints, and they do it in a good job. So even the fine massage or a slow massage, whatever it is, has to be done with a lot of, again, I would say consciousness, to see how the baby is feeling, how the baby is responding to it. So it's not like any type of massage. It's the way the baby likes it and responds to the massage.
So this is where I think we can talk about our post-pregnancy workshops, ma'am. So much information like this gets twisted and it's not passed on right to the next generations. We have two different kinds of post-pregnancy workshops. The first is for the new mom who just gave birth and the baby's age is between 0 to 6 months old, and the second workshop is for 6 to 24 months old, because the care and nutritional needs, everything is different, and it's a beautiful blend of ancient wisdom, modern medical science. So please do visit our website and check it out. Okay, so the next round is very interesting. I'll give you certain statements, ma'am. You tell me whether you love, learn, or you'd like to leave that. Okay, so the first one is anxious first-time parent. Would you love to deal with them, or you just want to learn more about them, or leave that consultation as soon as possible?
I would love to talk to them.
Wow. Okay. A teleconsultation.
It's difficult to answer, because if that's the only way that the mother can reach out to you, then I would like to learn from it and then do the right job.
Nice. Recurring coughs and colds, addressing that.
I would have to, I'll want to learn from it.
Yeah, okay.
In fact, there's a lot of learning. Each chronic cough, by the end of it, we learn a lot in managing it.
Okay. Developmental delay evaluations.
I would love to handle them.
Learn. Any allergy cases in children?
Learn from it.
Okay. The impact of epigenetics on babies?
Love to experiment with that.
Okay. The science of Garbha Samskara?
Love it. Only thing that works.
Okay. Giving vaccinations to newborns?
So when I know the background as to why I'm giving the vaccination, then I would love to give it.
Okay. Explaining to a grandparent that that's okay, that's the breastfeeding that's supposed to happen.
I would love to do that.
You're not going to leave everything, anything. Okay.
Because then the grandmother also will learn out of
Yeah,
it. And
that's
she becomes
beautiful.
a great support to the mother.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so the next round is based on your experiences so far, ma'am. We would love to hear more about it. So, what is the one parenting question that you absolutely love answering every single day, multiple times?
When they ask, how do we actually, go about this step of parenting, we would say a lot of responsibility, a lot of this, a lot of that. But I think why I like to answer that question is there's only one answer to it. That is love.
Mm.
And sometimes it's that unconditional love which comes in a parent.
Mm.
And that's the one which guides parenting.
Okay.
And a lot of mothers have actually said, I don't feel it.
Oh.
It's not that they don't feel it, but probably somewhere they're subduing it.
Right.
So when you can let out that feeling, then probably they will know.
Wow. I just hope those mothers find Aaryajanani, ma'am. It'll be very helpful for them. The next one is, you've been an incredible mother yourself to two incredibly strong, young, beautiful women. And during your pregnancy or even during parenting, is there anything specific that you did, but you probably can't mention it in the clinic as a doctor?
I don't know whether I'd like to mention it.
That's a fair answer. Okay.
But probably will not be able to answer. There's certain things that we do.
Got it, ma'am. Yes.
Which is very close to your heart.
Got it, ma'am.
But prayers probably.
Okay. What is that one baby habit that panics all parents and you say, relax, that's normal?
Yeah, they feel as if, the baby is not sharing.
Oh.
Baby.
Okay.
And then they keep saying, instill the habit of sharing.
Okay.
There is nothing that you have to really instill. It comes automatically. Usually babies get their manners or behaviors from how you conduct yourself. They see when the parents are sharing,
right,
then automatically they will get that culture of sharing. It is what they see in the parents that they will inculcate as behavior.
Okay.
So you can't keep on saying share. It's not what you tell. It's what you do that children, inculcate as behavior.
Got it. What is one modern parenting trend that you wish disappeared?
One modern parenting trend. I think it's a lot of, sometimes when you know a lot, then you're trying to overstimulate the baby with kind of so much of knowledge that you've gained. This is the right way of doing things. This is, according to some methodology you follow. I think that's when you lose spontaneity. I feel a lot of parents are doing it in a very structured way. I need to take them to this class, that class, they will develop like this. It's a lot of, there's no structure in this parenting thing. It's very spontaneous, I feel.
Okay.
Maybe wrong, but this is how I look at it.
Understood, ma'am. That's a very good answer. And what is one ancient trend that you wish disappeared? I don't know if we have any of them anymore. A lot of them.
There are a lot of superstitious activities.
Okay.
For example, even breastfeeding, remove the first milk, throw it off because it's like...
Really? I never heard of that.
No, we took a long time as pediatricians to explain that is wrong. You have to feed the first milk is important. Then so many superstitious things coming in. What the mother should eat, what they should not eat. There was a time when they would say mother should not eat anything, even drink water. And we used to find a lot of mothers having some brain issues related to that. So there are a lot of superstitious things. And I'm not talking about ancient wisdom. Okay. Wisdom is different from superstition, which has come into our culture very, very easily, in fact, based on certain principles which were set. From there, it has crept into superstition into society. So that's when you have to think logically. What is ancient wisdom? What is superstition? What is modern science? And then take everything together and make the best of it.
Got it, ma'am. Thank you. And the last one in this is, which one would you prefer when a parent calls, to prepone a vaccination or postpone?
Postpone.
Postpone. Okay.
Postpone.
Okay.
Because that minimum gap has to be maintained between two vaccinations.
Okay. So this brings us to the end, and we have one last and final segment, which is ask you about certain personal questions. Please, if you do not want to answer any of these, please feel free to skip, but we would love to know more there. Ma'am, after leading such a successful corporate life, what made you, what was the motivation behind you leaving all that and living a very simple, rather, life that is oriented in service and giving to the society and only giving to the society? Because we see you day in and day out for Aaryajanani also. You sacrifice, I know you don't like that word, but you give up so much just to make sure that the non-profit organization runs on time and we are able to help thousands and thousands of parents. What's the motivation behind it, ma'am?
You gave me a choice to step out, but yeah, I don't mind if it helps. But it was basically, I would say, much later in life. I realized the goal of life through reading Sri Ramakrishna's books, and especially the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, where actually I was told the goal of life at 40 years of age, and it said very clearly, it is realization of God.
Okay.
And that's when I started searching for methods to be able to at least make an attempt. And one thing which clearly comes is, whether it's prayerful attitude, living with, having those sadhana activities, service, especially as a doctor, which is clearly mentioned in the book also, especially as a doctor, you need to serve people and not expect anything in return. Yeah. So that became my motive, and hopefully I'm in that journey.
Your motivation is certainly inspirational for us. And I'm sure after watching this podcast, it will be for the viewers as well. Is there anything that you can share? I know it's very long back, but about your own pregnancy journeys, ma'am, any tidbits from there? Did you crave for something?
So, nice. So, pregnancy, for me, it was actually very special to have children. And it was, I think, far beyond marriage also. That my only contribution, I just said I didn't know my goal of life was realization. So as a young woman, I thought I should give children who are of value to the society. That was one of my, apart from medical profession, that was the other part of my thing, that I should give children who are value to the society.
Wow.
So in that way, I kind of dedicated that pregnancy thing, in the sense that, little cravings, of course, those, and not much really speaking, like how very evident. In fact, when I had my first daughter, I was doing my post-graduation in Loafer. It doesn't allow you to have too much of flexibility of whatever you want. It used to be driving late night, back home, going back on duties. Even the breastfeeding was in between, doing exchange transfusions. So these are very, very actually memorable now, because those are some things, again, we talk about selfless love. So those are experiences which every mother can have in their pregnancy journey. Yeah. So those were very enriching, because you believe that you can give to that baby of yours. So like that, the younger one also, I was at that time working. And we were very, very, I believe that's why she became a doctor, because at that time we were actually serving patients. And one of the patients told me, "You're pregnant, be careful."
Okay.
But still we were, helping them.
Okay.
So pregnancy is a beautiful journey we share.
Wow. In our workshops, we mention this to the mothers: ask what you really want the baby to be, communicate. So you have asked for the right thing, which is, be incredibly good human beings, which both of them are, an incredible contribution that they already are offering in such a young, tender age. And I did not know about this. I asked for my child to enjoy bath because I would hear screams, like I mentioned, hear screams of babies who were taking a bath. I'm like, no, while I was pregnant, when I was taking a bath, I would say, please enjoy your bath. And she wouldn't come out of the washroom, even at 6. So I think I asked for the wrong. Okay. Which is why you should attend workshops like Aaryajanani and make sure that you capture the essence of prenatal influence. The next one is, what about spiritual practices? I mean, the impact that they had on you as a practicing doctor, ma'am.
The spiritual practices are,
Yes.
they have actually, like I said, much later I realized what we should be doing, even in your profession. Initially, target is doing ethical practice, which I got a very good platform in the form of in the hospital for that is, where I could practice ethically. Then when it shifted to, this other kind of thing, then doing work at the health center, being of service to people, just because we talk about trying to see God in them and then do service. So those spiritual practices which we keep trying to inculcate, of course, we talk about it. It's not as if it's so easy also. You keep going back and forth. But when you practice it, there's a complete transformation in the way we do our profession. It's just love flows through you, and that's what hopefully helps.
Yeah. So you already mentioned about prayer before conception. So I'm sure you did that when you're pregnant also.
Yeah. So I don't really remember those moments in that sense.
Yes.
Yeah, but the thing is, like I said, my thing was the purpose of having a child was very clear in my head.
Ma'am, isn't that itself prayer? I mean, you're actually praying for the
when
quality.
We actually say a prayer, Geetha, it's a very interesting thing. In prayer, you don't have to pray in a particular format.
Right.
Whatever you're thinking, your inner soul, which is God, which is your Atman, totally understands it. So whatever, that's why they say, you speak out into the universe and that fructifies.
Yeah.
So it is a prayer in a sense that whatever you wish for especially a prayer is known as whatever is good and you're thinking about it. So.
Okay. And what made you initiate a program like Aaryajanani, ma'am?
So it is totally what Swami Shithikantananda Maharaj, when I entered the health center, he was the head monk and in charge monk. So it was his ideas about why an individual is not able to understand higher ideas, because he was also speaking to a lot of people. And then so much of talking is not transforming at all. Then, when he researched into it, they found that the birth itself is a point, like Swami Vivekananda himself says, which is the basic philosophy behind Aaryajanani, is that it is the prenatal influence that gives the impetus for the child to do good or evil. And he says a lot of things beyond that. That's the crux of all our scriptures, is what he says. So from there, he kind of resolved that this is a way to transform human life. And when he told me as a pediatrician, we used to question this idea. When does parenting really start? And we used to discuss amongst colleagues, when does parenting really start? That is when he spoke about it, I also had to, looked at a lot of scientific research, which the modern science from the West is talking a lot of, doing good to the humanity through this process of early prenatal, conscious parenting. So both that together, it was when we decided that this program could happen. But it is all under his mentorship, where how the program should be done, what we should take in, what we should not, the spiritual elements being important were really put in there.
Okay, so one last question is, ma'am, in a lot of countries, of course, right now I think 120 countries offer maternity leave, but a few countries go beyond that. For example, in Denmark and Sweden, the government officially mandates a housewife or a midwife to visit the newborn baby and the new mother for at least 4 to 5 days and make sure that everything is going well. And even in Netherlands and Belgium, at least 24 hours of a midwife visiting a newborn child's house is mandated within the first 8 days. Like that, is there anything that you would think our government should bring in as a policy which will help because the better postnatal care is, the stronger the nation is. So anything on that regard, ma'am?
Yeah. So sometimes we cannot totally compare ourselves because the logistics in India being such a vast country, populous, the most populous country in the world. So you can't really think of what is happening in the West End. But while you were answering that question, I was thinking India, it's also, we have so many facilities which the government is improving, every year you find it, especially in the sense of maternal and child care. In the sense of, if you look at the MCH card, the way we have improved over years, the immunization status, the mother, now more people are going to the government sector because you have more improvised vaccinations being given. And now I see those mothers are being given reminders on cell phones from the government.
Wow.
And when you're talking specifically about postnatal visits, you have your ASHA workers. The government sector mothers, in fact, you find them more delivering, normal deliveries are happening more there. And visits too. Of course, they don't go within this first 7 days, but each ASHA worker has been allocated certain number of mothers from the stage of pregnancy to taking them to the hospital. And then after that, postnatal visit. It's only that we don't know about these things, and they're probably not put in place as perfectly well compared to what we need in the country. So we always find there's a lacuna. But the government is doing appropriate things. It's just the practice of doing it. Maybe how it's regulated, how it's being done in real outside, on the field should be monitored.
Yeah.
But we have lots of things already in place for maternal and child care in India.
Wow, that's very encouraging to hear. I don't know about the urban population itself, but recently the same ASHA workers have saved my cousin's life because she was carrying twins, and they visited her house. They apparently do that. They frequently visit almost every month to check on her health. I wasn't aware of it. So they went and then they checked, and once they examined the womb, she was, I think, 4 months pregnant. They said, there is something wrong. Did you get your scan done? So she said, no, just the ultrasound, because only that was there for them as an access. So they said, no, you go to a better place, better hospital, and get a complete scan done because we feel something is off here. So she immediately went with her husband, and she was told that she was expecting twins. One of the babies passed away 2 days ago, and there was already the poisoning building up. And the doctor mentioned that had it been at least 1 or 2 days more delay, it would have been very fatal for her also. So in a way, they were the ones who saved her life. So everything.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I wouldn't understand the total story in that sense, but they are doing that exactly that. In fact, for Aaryajanani also, when we do the district programs and these, we actually involve the ASHA workers and Anganwadi teachers. In fact, we're wondering how to put it in the PHCs, train the ASHA workers to talk about these kind of concepts, about how emotionally bonding, all these elements, prayerful elements can be put into the regular. And they are the best to tell mothers because we've seen them, we've worked with them, and they are so motherly to, of course, you have different variety of people, but they are very good Anganwadi teachers and workers.
It's very encouraging to hear. So on this great note, we'll end today's first podcast of Aaryajanani. And by now you must have understood that the quality of a human life is decided long before the parents even plan on conceiving. So we have our pre-marriage workshops and pre-pregnancy workshops as well. Please do visit www.aaryajanani.org to learn more about these workshops, and please do attend and share these workshop details with all the young adults in your family and friends and circle. All right. Thank you. Lovely conversation, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Geetha.
Thank you.